Guys, this video is brought to you by freedomraffle.org. They are giving away a brand new Tesla Model S Plaid. We love doing giveaways and we love it when you guys win these cars. So head to freedomraffle.org to support our Afghan allies and hopefully win a brand new Plaid. Colton.
Hi there.
So for those of you who are new to maybe our channels, Colton runs the out of spec detailing channel for us. Thank you for doing that.
Of course. Really enjoying it.
It's great because we can take the out of spec nerd level 9000 and approach it to paint care and body gaps and maybe stuff that maybe I'm interested in, but it's not my forte, but you're the expert in this stuff.
Definitely.
And so that's why we brought the Lucid over to you. Also, Peter, the owner of this car, is going to have you do the same thing we did to the Plaid.
Right.
Which is like a full, what is he going to do?
So essentially, yeah, we're doing exactly what we did with the Plaid. So evaluating the paint from kind of the start point. I talked with Peter, we may get into that a little bit in this video, but we're gonna do a full paint correction on this afterwards, getting all the scratches, swirl marks out, then refining the paint with a polish, and then the paint is getting a ceramic coating. The wheels, I believe we're doing as well, and all of like the black plastic trim. We've got a little underneath here and down the side sill, so it's all gonna be protected. I'm gonna do an interior detail for him as well. You know, just while it's here, might as well.
It sounds like these wheels will actually be off the car when it comes, which will make detailing them even easier.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it sounds like Lucid actually, because they know we're testing this car, which is really cool of them.
Yeah.
They offered to send us a set of 21-inch wheels for the performance stuff.
Very
so
cool.
Really excited about that. Nice to see them supporting our testing, so I'm really glad. I want to talk about this car really quick, which is the Mercedes EQE, and it represents, it's the younger brother of this car's, I'd say, direct competitor with EQS and Lucid Air. But, you know, we can get into driving dynamics, range, power, and performance all in other videos. This whole video is about paint and build quality. What's your initial impression of Mercedes quality? You've worked on Mercedes over the years. You just had a new GLS in here.
Right.
What is Lucid going up against is really what I'm trying to figure out with this thing right here.
So I've seen a few different things, good and bad, from Mercedes. The GLS, we've got a full video series that I filmed on that. I think you had some as well on your personal channel. I found was some really weird and honestly, in my opinion, not the greatest paint quality. There was one spot in particular that looked like it had been repainted and not well.
From the factory.
From the factory. And yeah, it was really, really just not good. I mean, you saw it immediately, went, wow.
Yeah, I was like, what, did they forget to paint that part? And it really looked like the pearl effect in that wasn't painted.
Correct.
But in terms of the gaps and everything on this car, to me, now it is important to mention this is a Mercedes pre-production press car. It might be a production one, I don't know, but they go through these things.
Yeah.
But so this is exacting, all of the panels everywhere. The paint quality itself, wonderful. This was actually here for the global launch of the EQS SUV was here in Denver. And so Mercedes left a few electric cars behind for us to test, which is pretty cool. And you know, it's a weird design. Visually, I think it doesn't look that good, the EQE. But even if you come over here, if we bring the camera over, you'll see that the gaps around this little port are just exact top, bottom, left, and right. Everything fits. The wheels are really interesting on this one, right, Colton?
Yeah, definitely very interesting. I personally love this design of the wheels, the kind of perforations in there. I think it's really nice. But just like immediately when you walk up to this, you're kind of, it's just that Mercedes presence that they have. Like everything is very nice and tidy, very similar to Audi build quality, I would put it. It's very German, and that's kind of,
and that's what a lot of buyers, and the reason I bring this car up is that's what a lot of buyers are expecting when they get a Tesla, a Rivian, a Lucid, one of these new startup EV makers, because no question, this thing is just rock solid.
Yeah.
Look, I can find faults in it in terms of a quality perspective, especially when it comes to driving dynamics and stuff. But in terms of how everything fits, how the panels are laid out, exacting. If you come over here, if we were come up into the details here, you'll see this door, this panel, it all lines up millimeter perfect. And this you can do when you have a really good existing relationship with the suppliers of the car.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
you're buying them in bulk. They're going to make a ton of EQEs globally for this car, right? And so they have a lot of buying power. They can say, hey, I need this plastic panel, which we'll use that plastic panel as a good direct comparison. This thing, rock solid, no warping, fits wonderfully, and it's of really consistent quality.
Definitely.
At least that's the goal.
I mean, look at back here, how nice and tidy. Like, that's a big tail light here. You've got multiple panels coming in, and that is just like as precise as you can get. And now you come over to the Lucid, and as I think we talked a little bit about, something's going on with this trunk lid. So,
well, and this car in particular, we should mention, isn't a gone through prepped press car like that EQE is.
Sure.
This is an owner vehicle. But look at this panel right here you mentioned. Rattling.
Lots of rattles, and I'm surprised you don't hear more of that. I haven't ridden in the back seat of this, but I would assume maybe at some point, bumpy roads, that may come into play. But back here, this is one of the big areas you were talking about.
Even with Tesla.
Yes, and honestly, like, you and I have had these conversations off camera, on camera a little bit. I think people often go a little too overboard on measuring panel gaps and this and that.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, does it really matter if the car drives nice, you love it? I don't know.
To me, no. I mean, as long as the thing's not falling apart.
Right.
And doesn't visually look terrible, it's fine. There's only one point on this whole car that catches my eye that looks pretty bad. And that is what's going on with the rear trunk lid back here. This whole panel, I think, might need to come out a little bit, would be my impression. Because if you stand back here at the door, I showed it in the initial tour, this is the first thing that I walk up to, I'm like, whoa. I can pretty much stick my finger in here, almost.
And even more down at the bottom here, where it's nice and tight up there.
Yeah, but this might be by design. We'd have to look at another Lucid Air. But it just definitely doesn't sit on this side as it does on this side, which is very nice and tidy.
Correct.
And so, okay, new car company, these are the little things that we're expecting to find. One interesting point, though, is the spoiler. There's a thermoplastic, I imagine, rear deck lid or rear trunk. The whole thing is one piece, is integrated. Yeah,
and that's one thing I was noticing when you were filming earlier. I was looking at this, and we don't have the Model S here. I mean, even the EQE has it here, but the spoiler is actually integrated here.
Versus a stuck-on.
I wonder if that plays anything with efficiency, because you have air in here as well. You know, I'm sure there's reasoning behind why they did that.
But this is a much cleaner way of putting in a spoiler.
It's cleaner, but I would assume for the manufacturing purposes, that's a far more expensive way to do it and far trickier.
It's possible, but maybe with plastic becoming an easier material to work with. I know the plastic content of cars is just going to skyrocket.
Right.
A lot of you guys know Magna is one of our sponsors, and they have a whole exteriors department, and their plastic division is just through the roof. They're going hardcore. They did the whole rear end for the ID Buzz in plastic, I believe.
Really?
That giant tailgate. Yep.
Very cool.
So pretty cool stuff. Interesting taillight here. Huge taillight. Not seeing any fitment issues with that at all.
No,
for such a big piece.
Pretty good. And like I think you told me earlier, this is the biggest rear single taillight.
Yeah, the widest taillight in production.
It's crazy.
I think.
Because normally, even like on the Rivian back there, you see that it's split where the tailgate comes down.
Yeah.
Kind of crazy to see how huge and massive that is.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to get into a rear quarter panel accident, because you'd have to replace this entire piece. Unlike the Mercedes, which has a dedicated bumper that comes up here within a very small trunk opening. Now, I guess we could just show the differences because they're both sedans. Take a look here. This is your load space in a traditional sedan. This is an electric sedan. And again, we're talking more about paint, but I think this is an interesting design point to Lucid, where it might look a little bit funky from the outside, but look at how much more space.
Big difference.
It's insane. So you can really put, I think you can put surfboards in here. Like, you can do kind of whatever you want, which is pretty neat. Also, nice underfloor storage. Look at how deep this is. The space efficiency in the Lucid is by far class leading. Even compared to Model S, the front trunk's huge on this thing. So that, we'll save that for the reviews, but you just can't fault some of the, clean sheet, starting fresh, new design and architecture concepts building a very spacious car.
Sure.
Okay, let's talk color, trim, but before we do that, let's talk about this specific car, since we're going to be analyzing this one in the paint booth here.
Yep.
Peter bought this car from Lucid, took delivery of it, and then it went back to Lucid the next month. And what happened during that? He said it went back for QA?
Yeah, so I would assume that they went back through it. I think there was probably some panel gaps stuff that they weren't quite happy with. It sounded like they went back through it and did some work around it. He noticed that there was some areas that didn't look so great. So I think once we get this washed up, pull it, you know, in the bay, look over it with lights, we're gonna see those. I've definitely already seen some things just at being out in the sun. We're gonna dive like deep dive into that, but yeah, it's definitely had some work done. The nice thing is this car hasn't been detailed before by Peter. He has only washed it twice, hand washed it twice. So it's not like this car's been buffed on at another detail shop.
Right, and you're trying to figure out, was this Lucid, was this a detailer? This is kind of how the car came from the factory.
Exactly, but with a few more miles, right?
Yeah, of course. Well, and that's sort of the thing that it's always hard to know for a scratch if someone walked up and scratched it, or if that's how the car was delivered. But I think you can, there's also different types of paint imperfections that we've seen, such as sanding marks and wet sanding marks, I should say. Can you explain?
DA sanding marks, wet sanding marks. So a little bit different there. That you can either dry sand or wet sand on those. A lot of what I've seen on this already, a lot of DA haze, a lot of rotary polishing already happening. Looking around some of these cracks and crevices here, I've already seen some areas that have compound residue or polishing residue left in there. So there's a lot of work happening on this car. Honestly, just like initial impression, we haven't even really washed this. I mean, we rinsed it off quickly to film a video, but lots of work went on to this car. So be very curious to see what that looks like.
Yeah, and I would say Porsche, Audi, you have a lot of experience with, Lamborghini even. A lot of those cars get looked at by the end of line folks, and we see a million marks all over them.
Yeah.
And so it's not uncommon to see the manufacturers adjusting paint and trying to fix them, which is kind of a shame, actually, because they usually don't do a very good job finishing them.
Well, and that's exactly it. They're trying to fix these defects, but they're not taking, it's really interesting because they're spending time doing it, but they're not finishing it to like the level that I will be. Now, that being said, like your Model S, I mean, I spent, I think between 40 and 50 hours. I don't know the exact whatever it was, but it was a ton of a time, going through it, getting it perfect. Tesla doesn't have that time. Lucid doesn't have. Mercedes, I mean, they just don't have that time.
Yeah, we'll see the same marks on this car. So I'm just trying to set the stage that even though we know we'll find imperfections on this car, it's a black car, we're gonna find stuff, that it's not totally uncommon. But it's also a very subjective thing that you and I will work through as we film this vehicle to see if it has more or less and why. And my impression when you tell me, okay, there's more things that you see they're working on, well, that makes sense to me because they're not building a massive buttload of these things. They're coming down the line at a slow pace and they want them to be perfect.
Right.
I think Lucid, my impression is they at least are working hard and they care about the end quality. And that's kind of cool to see. So let's, as the truck's rolling up here, let's back this sucker in. And we'll wash it down. You can give us some tips on what you're finding when we're washing it, because of course we'll have other Lucid owners viewing this. Maybe you can find some spots on how to actually get into the door handles and things like that. I don't know, but I think the keys are in it. So
perfect.
Back her on in.
Excellent.
Well, here we are inside. The car is looking good. One thing I'm actually noticing, especially inside, is this windshield piece is a huge piece of glass.
It's massive.
Very similar to Model X, where it comes all the way up. Gives a really cool impression on the inside of the car. I'm also noticing it doesn't fit flush.
Yeah, and then you have areas like this here that it seems like the back glass is a little bit warped, maybe, that it sits up high here, but then kind of dives down, and then kind of interesting.
This is where I was talking about that supplier relationship. Of course, Lucid, I imagine, isn't manufacturing this glass. Unlike, I think Tesla has their own glass division now. At least that was the rumor. But to get a panel in this size into such exacting tolerance,
that is.
That's tough.
I think in the car earlier when we took this around, we heard a little bit of whistle. I wouldn't be surprised if it came from that sort of area.
Right, and again, a lot of these things, these fitment issues, are car-to-car based as well. And so this is the car we have to evaluate, and maybe at some point in the future we'll have another Lucid to look at. Of course, we'll film an update video on that, and I think it would also be interesting as their production continues. One of two things can happen, like we've seen with other automakers, where as they ramp production, sometimes quality decreases. We've certainly seen that with Model 3, that like the first ones were the best ones, and then we went through this period of just like junk, and then now we're back to really good. Or we're starting to see things like Rivian actually ramping production and keeping better quality. So we don't really know what's going to happen here with the Lucid side of things, but I wouldn't be shocked if quality increases. Now, I had a friend and acquaintance who ran their production division at Lucid, Peter Hochholdinger, known him for years, and he just recently left the company. I haven't spoken to him, I don't know all the details, but very interesting things going on at Lucid from a personnel standpoint, which should affect the overall output quality of the cars, I imagine. Okay. But I do know, I've met a lot of people at the factory, been to the factory, everyone there has like 10, 20 plus years of automotive experience. Everyone's like, I worked for GM or Audi or whoever, Volkswagen Group, you know, a lot of them. And to me, everyone just knew exactly what to do. Like the competence level in that factory was higher than I've experienced from any other spot. So that was pretty impressive being over there. Just my I guess, anecdotal impression. But yeah, can we talk about this trim really quick?
Yeah, so between this, I immediately kind of looked at this and go, that's kind of an interesting design choice. So we've got gloss painted trim that goes all the way around the back. It actually kind of encapsulates this rear glass here. But what's really interesting, I'm going to bring you back over here, Alyssa, I apologize. But these mirror caps are satin. So you have kind of an interesting, I don't know if they're all like that. I know this isn't the dark, what is it, shadow line that they call it?
Yeah, I forget what they call their new line. Could be shadow line, but they just launched a new, basically darker tinted version of this, which I much prefer.
And then even noticing the difference of material from this to this, I would kind of almost assume that you would make those two the same, but you have three different kind of silver.
Oh, so you think this is even different than the roof?
100% different.
Oh, and different from the mirrors.
Yeah, definitely. Because this is more like I don't know how to explain it exactly, but like a covered piece of plastic, which basically has like an aluminum.
Oh, like a wrap type situation?
But this is completely satin, very porous.
That's really nice.
I like this.
Yeah, that's like an Audi mirror.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But very different to see kind of materials used in different places, areas. So
the interesting thing is this Lucid that is baked into this front panel here is backlit at night. Ooh. Which is really nice. But then the exacting standards of where the letters are placed are perfect. So I don't know if it's produced with these at the supplier or how this all works. It's not really for us to know. But I will say whatever is going on this car up here with the badge is A+.
Cool.
Yeah, really nicely done.
We'll turn the lights down in here, show you guys a nice close-up of that.
Right.
As well.
Coleton, there's also some cool stuff, maybe you know, maybe you don't know, but these headlights are sort of a new type of technology, and I'm not a real lighting guru, so I can't fully explain exactly how it works, but they are insanely bright at night, but they require a lot of cooling. And so what happens is the air comes in through a channel somewhere through here, I'm not exactly sure, maybe underneath, and then it comes out of this little fin, and it's there to cool the LEDs on the back of the lights.
Very interesting. I want to also point this out because immediately this is one of the things that I saw here. So notice this. So this is like a porous black trim here. And notice all of this white marks in there. So typically what that is from manufacturers is they go in, they polish that area, but they're not taping it off. From a detailing perspective, same on Rivian, any car, you go in, you tape this, buff next to it, so you're not getting that transfer over, because that can be very tricky and can physically damage that plastic to where it's kind of a mess to deal with.
Right, and we're not sure if this happened at end of line or at Lucid's QA, but we are sure that it didn't come from Peter because he didn't wax, he used a spray situation, not a physical.
It didn't sound like the car had been to a detail shop. It didn't sound like he had hand waxed it. You can see similar marks, but I can already tell from detailing wise, that's from a machine. So very interesting. I'll definitely want to put a light on that and see what kind of polishing they have.
What's going on there.
Yeah.
What do you think has been left on the paint for protection from the factory? Most factories just leave clear coat and that's about it. They're not waxing the cars or anything, but sometimes a delivery center might put a Carnauba wax on there to make it look really shiny.
Yeah, or even say when you pick the car up from a dealership, you don't know what their soaps have in it, because typically when a car comes from the manufacturer, goes to the dealership, they get PDI'd, so they go through, unlock all the software, take out any shipping blocks or whatever is around the vehicle, and then they like to typically wash it. Never know what's in those soaps. We rinsed this off earlier. I can tell you there's little to nothing on this paint.
Yeah, is there a way for you to show our audience that that's the case? Because the one thing that's interesting is there's no dealers for Lucid, right? It's like Tesla. Yeah, okay. It's all one company. So it's, yeah, it's the direct sales model, basically.
So let's just spray some water on over here. Now, this is not pressured water, but notice how this immediately just kind of sticks on the paint there. All of this just sheeting instead of physically beading.
Right.
I think once we get this washed down too and get even more of that grime pulled off, I mean, there's a lot of bugs. You just road tripped this literally yesterday from California to Colorado.
Right.
Had a lot of bugs on it, but lots and lots of grime on here too. So I think once we get this nice and clean, be curious. I don't think there's much of any protection.
Right. This is just raw paint, basically. Yeah. That's my impression as well. And that's why the car's also here, is to get protected.
Exactly.
As well. But you really need to go through it. So could you actually spray some of the water on the glass portion? You know how the early roofs of Model 3s, the tinted bits, came up colored?
Yeah, I was noticing that on the back one.
Ah,
here,
interesting.
Noticing the green.
So if you look up high, you'll see that this is definitely a different tint than what's at the top of this windshield here. So that's pretty interesting. And very colorful coming out of the water. Pretty How about
cool.
that? That is cool.
I've always loved to see that on Model 3. It's just really interesting. This is,
yeah.
From my angle, it's kind of greenish purple. I don't know about over there.
Yeah, definitely from my side as well, greenish purple. I imagine on like a dewy morning when water is sticking to this, it's going to be really interesting. It'll have that Model 3 colorful effect.
Very cool. So yeah, I think even once we get this like fully washed down, rinsed off, you're going to see a lot of that come back. Kind of interesting what they do with that for sure.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Now you were also mentioning that they have this foam probably for NVH or maybe for something, this sort of felt material.
Yeah, and I've seen this from a lot of manufacturers. Let's go on to this side actually, because this side's a little wet already. I've dealt with this stuff quite a bit in kind of my detailing career, and I just absolutely hate this stuff. As you'll notice here, it's this kind of foamy material, and it holds all this lint, and it is like next to impossible to get that out. So
yeah, so if you come back in, I don't know if you can see all the lint spots and everything. Let's see, just put it, let's try it this way. Here we go. There, you can see it all through here.
It just holds onto it like that, but also notice the front one doesn't have it. Only this rear section has it, which is kind of weird.
Well, is that true? Because the front does have it here.
But it's a totally different material on there.
Oh, you think they're two different materials, or
Definitely.
is it? No, it doesn't feel like that to me. Really?
I don't know. I kind of feel like this is extra fluffy and sticks out too.
It definitely sticks out, I agree, but that could just be like maybe not the perfect matchup. Interesting. Yeah, but I do feel a small difference between the two, yeah.
Yeah, and just noticing like first kind of panel gaps, as we'll talk about here, how different that is, and even to this back window, which doesn't have any of that.
Right, so this has none of it.
I would assume they're using a lot of this for noise, going down the road with wind and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see. Also, can I just point this out?
That's interesting.
Yeah,
there.
Watch your rag there. You don't want to catch that and just
yeah,
pull
absolutely.
That thing off.
I mean, that's a sharp edge there. So
I know.
if you're coming around doing that, you could easily snap that in half.
Snap
or
it. Yeah.
Break it.
Yeah.
Huh.
So I mean, it definitely feels like an early production car.
In a sense, it does. I think like the interior, from my perspective, I think we should go through that maybe after we wash it.
Yeah.
The interior feels really put together.
Okay, nice. Yeah.
Outside, it feels a little disjointed. Again, I don't think it's the end of the world that these cars have like not perfect panel gaps.
Well, no car does.
Exactly. And I think the whole Tesla thing with like my car back here, I think it's overplayed. People just freak out about it, and I personally don't really get it. Like,
well, why do you think we're making a video about it? Because enough people care.
Exactly. I'm OCD, but also like that stuff is, I don't know.
So what's your impression of these?
I do not like these at all.
Try moving them though. Feel it. They're like not.
Hello.
Yeah, there you go.
What was also interesting is when the car was locked, I don't know where the key's at right now, but you can push these in to where they don't pop back out, which is kind of weird.
What? You mean they automatically go in?
So-
Oh, you can physically.
Look at this, and then they go back in and don't stay, well, because the key's doing it, but it would stay in and not pop back out.
and it just locked itself with the keys inside of it.
Again.
Yes.
And that's the second time it's done that.
Yeah, so always have your phone key or a key card on with one of these things.
And that's something to note with detailers, and I deal with this a lot because I'm working around these cars. They all kind of react a little bit different. Rivian, with their key, is weird to work with.
So, Rivian key sucks.
Yeah, I never leave keys in cars, just in general, because exactly like this. And now I would have to call up my client and go, can you unlock this thing? Unlock the keys.
But also cool technology that we can do that. I want to get into the car because I want to show you. So, oh, whoa, actually, come on over here.
That's what I was talking about.
This is what you're, so this is just a defect.
But it does it on that side, but not on this side.
So the door handle is now impressed and it hasn't, oh, it just popped out and unlocked. Probably because my phone is also a key. It unlocked pulling it up this close. I want to show you the key for the car, which is, where is the key for this thing? Right here. This is the Lucid key. Looks really nice. It's very plasticky. It would be nice if it was made of metal. What do you think?
And it feels like literally a feather.
It's got no weight to it.
As far as keys would go, I would say this is one of like the cheapest keys I've ever seen. Like feeling wise.
Yeah, I agree. Keys should be meaty. It's something with this, caliber of car.
150 what?
Yeah, 154 for this one. The performance is 190.
Yeah, I don't know. That's one of those.
Yeah, but I guess you use your cell phone.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and just like the Model S key is also not that great.
True.
I like the shape of it though. It must have looked great on the 3D rendering when they produced it.
I'm sure it did.
Yeah. So should we jump inside actually before we wash it, just to take a quick glance at the interior?
That's totally fine.
Yeah, hop in the front. We'll put the camera in the back, and let's do it.
Nice thud immediately.
When you close the doors hard, they just poof.
Yeah.
It's wonderful, really wonderful. By the way, loving the vibe in here.
Yeah. The outside, my opinions, I'm kind of...
From a styling perspective.
From a styling, don't love it. The inside, though, is like next level.
Okay, so you think this is, getting out of the Model S and into this is night and day.
Yeah, like there's a big difference.
Yeah,
there's
this is next level.
Difference.
What's interesting, though, is you see how these rear mirrors are up here in the glass. I think it's a bit of a shame. I wish they put them over to the side like the Model X.
Sure.
Because when I was cruising through the mountains, I was like, let's go, do all this. The other thing I want to show is in the interior, this is really close to us.
Yeah.
And you don't really notice it because it's glass, but I went to take a sip of water and I was like, whoa, and it spilled all over me. Because I was just like normally drinking and smashed this into the roof.
So I think one of their really interesting design choices in here is this glass. If this was covered up to like a normal car, I feel like it'd be very claustrophobic.
Well, they offer that as the non-glass roof version,
really?
And I think you just shouldn't get it.
I think it would be very claustrophobic just from perspective.
I think you gotta have the glass roof without question. That's just my opinion. So that's this. The other cool thing about these things is you see how these are lit up, very similar, I think maybe even the same as Tesla.
Yeah, with the like almost identical shades here, kind of like the old iPads, if you will.
But Jordan went to the Lucid showroom in Denver and opened one of these, and all the batteries fell out of it because they're battery powered.
Wow.
Yeah, because they're not hooked up to anything.
Very
so add that to the maintenance list. Maybe once every 10 years. I don't know how long it'll last, but they're definitely, the batteries are going to live a rough life baking in the sun all the time.
Definitely. From an interior material standpoint, I love how they've done this. You have some Alcantara here, some nice wood, some really fine grained leather. Also noticing the acoustics, how nice it is in here.
Yeah.
It's just like very, very quiet. Everything you touch and feel. I always love the people who come in here and shake the dash because you do that on a daily basis. Sure. But everything is
no creaks.
Tight.
But, okay, so I would say all those things as well. So I'll play devil's advocate.
Yeah.
It's all plastic.
There's a little bit of plastic in here, but I think...
Adjusting this feels like garbage. The turn signals especially, one of the worst turn signal materials I've ever experienced. And you can't cancel them in the same direction you put it on. So put it full on for a second. By the way, the turn signals glitched out on my drive here. Really? They were like, they didn't know, and then cancel it in the same direction you put it on. And it just keeps going. So then you have to go the other way.
Interesting.
Which then sometimes I was putting on the other turn signal. Little things.
Yep.
One cool thing though is
the screen.
That's a very nice sounding action.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, very premium. I wonder how long it'll last.
That was my first initial thing when you did that. I go, that seems like a lot of complexity to just be able to have some nice storage space here, which is great, but kind of an interesting design choice. I think it's very cool.
Yeah, I guess you're not going to be using it all the time, so kind of nice little touch there. And then the kind of glitches into life. Software needs some work. We've been through that.
Sure.
And they are sending updates over and over. Massage function in here.
It's very strong too.
There we go. Yeah, very strong. And I wanted you just to experience this one, which is unlike any massage I've experienced.
Whoa.
Isn't that weird? It like shakes the seat. You can hear it rumbling.
You really can.
Yeah, that's
Very
an interesting one.
Wow.
Anyway, that's not so much about it. But you know what I do love is I love these little touch points,
Yeah,
the rollers.
Everything you're touching in here, to me, I mean, like you can get into some of these vents, but I do like that you can manually adjust these.
And the HVAC, compared to any other car I've been in recently, is amazing. It has wonderful airflow, but you don't feel like it's blasting on your face, and it's quiet, and it gets really cold.
Yeah.
So I was so blown away by the air conditioning. In a car without tints, I wasn't even bothered.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, just from like my opinion, overall interior wise, I mean, it feels worth that $154 asking price for this.
So you think a step up from the exterior?
I personally think so.
I agree.
I don't love the exterior. You know, as you and I have talked about, this car does not photograph well.
Right.
The small Aero wheels on this.
This particular car is really not great.
Not its greatest attribute. But yeah, the interior is something special, I think.
And these new materials that they're using on the bottom, these like fabrics are really nice. The Alcantara seems to be a pretty good, this is real leather, and it's a good quality leather, and it has some heft to it. It's very different than a Mercedes interior.
Right.
But I would say almost minimalistic, but definitely like, I guess what I was thinking in the car yesterday was like, this is California luxury.
It is. And they've done, I think, what's kind of impressive. I believe this is the Mojave interior. Is that what they call it?
Yeah, I don't know all the names.
But they've done a nice job on a black interior, making it upscale and not boring.
Yes, absolutely. The contrast for the materials, they're small, but definitely someone put these all in the right place. Love the little Lucid badge over here. Visually, this is wonderful. You can also change the themes of the screen and the ambient lighting. By the way, beautiful ambient lighting strip here. Very, very nice.
Like everything here just feels...
There's not one squeak in this car. Yeah. Not one squeak, not one rattle. I mean, it's got more miles than my Model S does now, or about the same, and that car's rattling more than this. And Tesla's had 12 years to build cars, and this thing's brand new. But you can also change sort of the effect. I think Solitude works really well in this, but you can go to, you know, it changes the screens and the ambient lighting to different colors. Yeah, I think actually I'll put it in Solitude. I really like this gray-black theme to go with this interior.
And I know one of your biggest gripes with this car has been software.
Yes.
Just disregarding that, I think like the screens, how they're laid out, it's very functional. It feels thought out in a sense. I think obviously it's a new manufacturer. They have over-the-air updates. There's a lot still to gain, but like just initial appearance, I'm in and out of a lot of vehicles just like you are. This is a really, really nice place to be.
No, I'm glad you're liking it so much, and I think there's a lot that they can do with these screens, but ergonomically, like there's some things here that like just a Mercedes would never allow. Somewhat like an example would be, I have a cup holder here, and I was trying to like type in the screen, and I had two cups here, and I was like, I don't know how to hit the keyboard. And those are just little things that come with time with existing automakers. They've done this for 50 years, that you're finding little ergonomic challenges here. But not every car is perfect. There's no such thing. I would say though, the Lucid, for a fresh product right off the line with such an incredible powertrain and chassis, they definitely did not forget about the interior. And just my impression of driving it over bumps and, you know, 1,000 miles, you hit pretty much everything going through there. Felt so solid, and it really just put me in a relaxed mood spending time in this car. I was like, normally after a 1,000-mile road trip, I'm like, I don't want to get back in that car. I'll drive something else. I couldn't wait to get back in this car today. So they nailed it. Yeah,
that's a lot to say for you, especially.
Nailed it. And I love the door handles to get out.
Very unique.
It's like a trigger.
I find that this interior is so minimalist, but it's so unique, and the choice of materials is very nice. Like, I keep going back to it just feels the price tag.
Yep, I agree 100%. It's different from S-Class. It's not overly done, and the build quality is great. This piece right here mounted pretty solidly, no creaks or rattles. The sound system, even at max volume, doesn't rattle. I will say two things I've noticed. If you take a look at the driver's door over here, there's an elbow impression.
Yep.
Yep, because that's where the elbow was. Here, I can take this and show.
You can definitely feel that too. So here, there's a little indentation, and this car, noticing just on the gauge cluster here, 3,650 miles. Kind of interesting. I'll be curious to see how that wears over time.
I don't think very well, and I think the foam underneath is not designed for automotive grade purposes, because that's, there's no real other place to put your elbow. You're either...
There's a little bit here, but
it's too low.
That it's too low. I could definitely see, putting your elbow up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be interested, especially to clean this. I'm very excited because a lot of new manufacturers, Rivian, Tesla, are doing the vegan leather, which is essentially vinyl at the end of the day, where this is like very fine grade, top quality.
Yeah,
leather.
Definitely top shelf leather. This is about as nice as you can get.
Yeah,
this is, Mercedes S-Class, but even with extra options on top of it. So really, really appreciate that. The perforations in the seat, the AC seats don't work that well in my opinion, but I do like that they're perforated and at least ventilated seats. So there was one more thing on the interior I was going to mention. I can't remember it. One more negative. Alyssa's putting up the rear shade, it looks like.
Very cool.
Nice. So what do you think about the back seat quality-wise? Massive. But what about quality-wise?
Feels good, feels comfortable, feels like a good chauffeur car.
Feels like a good chauffeur car.
Just my personal opinion, they could have brought in more of these Alcantara and this nice fabric to the back. I think they kind of skipped out on that a little bit.
Oh, let's take a look. Okay, hadn't noticed that. So you'd think more, I'm not really an Alcantara guy per se.
Well, and from a detailing perspective, it's a lot.
Ah, interesting. Just leather back here. How about that? So we have this sort of grayish leather and then a darker leather. This is all leather, actually, I think. Yeah, it's definitely soft touch vinyl or something.
Look at the difference of the door panels, though, how different aesthetically they look. I really like this. This is a nice material. Be curious to see how this wears over time. Alcantara or suede in general is very tricky to deal with.
Agreed.
Darker colors are definitely nice, but when you start getting light interior Alcantara suede, can get very tricky to clean.
So, okay, there's our initial impression. Build quality wise, solid. Very impressive interior. I don't like the soft close actuation.
It's not very smooth, as you can see, like just aesthetically looking at it, it kind of rattles in there. Not the most pleasant. When you give it a good thud, though, it's really nice. Yeah,
if you slam the door, it's like not quite G-Wagon, but it's pretty good. So let's wash it down and let's look at the paint and let's get an idea of how much time Lucid is spending on this car before it leaves the factory. Okay. So, Alyssa, you just found something?
Yeah, I know.
Looks like a plastic pry tool, perhaps.
Yeah.
No, that is actually.
Yeah.
I wonder if this has been left in here when it went through its...
quality assurance.
Interesting.
We should ask Peter.
Yeah, we should. I'll definitely send Peter a picture of this and say...
It could be his. But where'd you find it from, Alyssa?
Right under here.
So, and I also noticed when I backed up the seat earlier to get in this, there was a thud. So I'm thinking that may have been under there.
That could be it. So every time I moved the seat, it kept raising. And then I'd have to push it back down manually.
Interesting.
So I wonder if it was just riding up on this thing.
Well, look at how kind of beat up this is. I would not be surprised if that's what happened there.
I think the seat was eating into it. Whoops.
Interesting.
So what's next? What are we going to go through?
So we're going to start wash process. So I want to get everything kind of off of this vehicle so we can really evaluate the paint. I had just asked you if this had a car wash mode. Now, a lot of electric cars these days are using a car wash mode for one particular reason, charge ports, because you hit it with a pressure washer with soap, charge port opens, especially on something like Rivian with that crazy actuation it has.
Right, and that little capacitive opening. Yeah.
So you can hit that. Now, I want to bring you over here. This is kind of an interesting charge port. We're going to see what happens. Let's leave the car unlocked and wash it down. This is kind of a goofy way to open this. So from what I understand, you press down here. what I'm already noticing is this charge port is actually hitting down here on the paint.
Oh my God, crazy.
And check out the movement in there, but it's actually touching the paint down here.
So it's just rubbing the paint every time it opens and closes. And I did it about 50 times yesterday.
Yeah, so that's something to kind of keep in mind. I really wish that would be farther out.
Well, it's probably not as designed.
Right.
I can't imagine they would design it. So maybe when Lucid service comes up, if they bring up the 21-inch wheels for this car,
Can ask them about that.
we'll of course make a video of how Lucid even services their cars, because that's the big question for me. Same with Rivian. How the heck are you supposed to get these things serviced? Apparently, they're sending a mobile one up here to deliver the wheels, and maybe we can ask them if they can adjust this.
Yeah,
as well.
because that definitely doesn't seem like something that you would like to see. Or
my question is, how do you close it once it's open? I don't know if you just lift up on it a little bit. Yeah, you just lift up a little bit on it.
Interesting design choice there. So I'm curious to see if this opens. I know Rivian from experience washing those, you have to put that thing in car wash mode. Otherwise you are just putting like gallons of water into the charge port. Not what you want.
Do you think it's actually damaging the paint at all?
Let's look at that after we kind of wash it, because the worry here is, especially with a dirty car, is that every time that touches it, you're essentially scratching the paint on there. So we'll see. It's definitely got a good layer of grime on it right now. So let's get that off and we'll kind of look around and see what it's doing for that.
So tell us about your wash setup here, because again, a lot of people watching this video may not be familiar with our detailing channel, or what you got going on.
So this is very heavily inspired by Obsessed Garage. This was gone through by Matt Moorman.
Yep.
Basically trying to get the best possible pressure washer in my opinion, one of the most aesthetically beautiful pressure washer systems out there.
And the best thing about Obsessed Garage is it's like obsessed. And I've been a huge fan. I've known Matt for years. We've been friends since before Obsessed Garage even took off. And I've always loved this setup. So when I met you, which we've known each other for a long time, but when I came to see your shop and I saw this in here, and I was like, whoa, this dude is legit. So this is all you need to know.
The Cranzla system, I went ahead and spent way too much money on every single fitting being stainless steel instead of brass, building this thing to last. And this thing has not skipped a beat. Like, this pump is just a beast.
Oh, the Cranzla is the best in the business by far. It's very much the Lucid drivetrain of pressure washers.
Yeah, exactly. So just, if you guys are curious, these down here, so these are deionized tanks. So basically it's taking all the mineral content out of it. If I turn this on here, this TDS monitor is showing total dissolved solids in a parts per million. So we have fresh, clean water, demineralized, just awesome here. I don't use this until my final rinse. Our water here isn't bad, but especially washing a big car like this, minimizing water spots is just the way to go. So I'm going to turn on.
In theory, if there's no minerals in there, you could spray black paint, let it sit, and there'll be no spots.
In theory, it will spot a little, but they wipe away very, very easily. So, I mean, this pump, the great thing about it is how quiet it is. And you can just hear that. It's such a German.
Precise.
So let's get this thing rinsed down. We're going to foam it, give it a good hand wash.
Cool. I'm going out of the splash zone.
Fair enough.
Looking forward to watching this. It's always fun to watch Coleton's pressure washer have such a smooth, consistent output with huge GPM as well.
Yeah, and that's the big thing, is why I went for this, is actually what's kind of funny and people don't realize, for detailing, you don't really want high PSI. You want more GPM, less PSI. So kind of an interesting thing, but Cranzla is just like, I love it.
The jam.
Yeah. So already noticing, look how this is sticking to the paint. So little to nothing as far as protection on the paint.
It honestly looks like my Model S after you did the isopropyl alcohol wipedown.
Exactly, yeah.
Which just removes all coatings. It's still on there.
Yeah, still dripping down.
Crazy.
It's just a huge difference.
Yeah, but that's no fault of Lucid's. That's just there's no protection on this car.
No, just want to show that, because that's important too as well. After we wash this, we'll do an isopropyl alcohol bath, because when we did your car originally, we just kind of washed it. Once I put the IPA on, all of the polishing oils, waxes, anything that was on there, just like all the stuff came out, and I was like, Whoa, we got a lot of work here.
So many more imperfections on the Model S.
Yeah. So putting direct pressure on the charge port did not come open. So I think that's why they didn't need a car wash mode in this particular instance. So
what is that you're putting under there?
So these are a cool little guide. One of the big things with washing is cable management. So making sure that these are kind of strong and brittle, especially with pressure on them. You don't want to be smacking it against the car. So nice thing is I can by myself pull this and it pulls nice and easy through there.
Very nice.
All right, so let's immediately flip over here to foam cannon. So this is an MTM PF22 foam cannon.
Oh, that's the best one.
Yeah, literally the best one.
Oh, I was joking. I was like,
no,
but it is
honestly is. Inside here, we've got Chemical Guy Snow Foam. It's a nice, gentle cleaner. It does not have any waxes or residue that go back on, which is very important, especially in this case. We had tested out on your Model S the graphene shampoo, which adds a little layer of protection. We don't want to add anything. We want to take stuff off so we can actually see what's on there.
Yeah, we're trying to see some naked paint over here.
Exactly.
Smells incredible, Colton. You don't like the smell, Alyssa? Yeah, well, it's called Chemical Guys for a reason, right?
Yeah. All right, now we've got a white Lucid, and
looks good in white.
It really does. I think anything looks good filled with like crazy amounts of foam. It's just amazing to see that.
It's always the fun picture to take. It's like a silhouette of the car.
It really is.
I can't wait for a manufacturer to do like teaser photos covered in foam like this. That would be such a cool idea. So what you got here?
So let's start our 2-bucket wash. We've now got this foam down. So we've got a clear water rinse bucket here, and then we've got a bucket with, this is Adam's car shampoo. These have grit guards in the bottom, so we're not introducing any more scratches here using the proper 2-bucket method.
But again, the car is going to go in for a full paint correction, so it's not like it's the end of the world.
No, it's not, but at the end of the day, I want to save myself some time and effort to not put more scratches in. And again, with paint, you want to take off the least amount possible. We don't want to put deep scratches in there and then just dig and dig and dig at the paint. At the end of the day, you know, we still have to preserve the paint in a sense as well.
Absolutely, makes sense. What are you feeling just working on it? The glass is pretty cool, that huge canopy.
Yeah, the glass is really nice. It's, you know, honestly, from a detailer's perspective, it's nice to not have a full piece of paint up there to essentially have to worry about.
Right, unless you go for, I believe, the Lucid Air Pure Edition, or just Pure.
Oh, interesting. No sunroof at all on those?
Just a solid metal roof.
Wow.
Yeah, and that, I just think, out of my impression with this car, would really, I don't want to say ruin the vibe, but it's going to feel maybe rental car spec.
To me, it would feel very claustrophobic.
Yeah.
I kind of immediately felt that, actually, when I first sat in the car. It felt very small in the front. But as you kind of get going, gets kind of the feeling of kind of air moving over your head, it's really kind of neat.
That glass expands the cabin. And the thing
really
is, they had to, for range and aerodynamic efficiency, make the roof as low as possible. And I think they did a pretty damn good job with working with the space that they had available for their ultimate, targets, which was max range.
Right. So we're gonna just hit the glass here first. Not that we're really taking care of the glass, but just want to make sure that that's clean. I know Kyle's got a ton of tests and everything, so we want to make sure all of those bugs that came on here from California to Colorado are off. Immediately noticing this hood is very thin.
Oh, wow. Can you show that again, actually?
Without literally putting like hardly any pressure on here.
Yeah, I
very
see it
interesting
buckling there.
And I feel it again
too
as I go back and forth.
Wow. Now that, do you think is a weight saving situation, or what do you think the reason is? Maybe for pedestrian impact?
Yeah, I think a lot of the regulations, Kyle, have changed with that, making hoods thinner and more impact resistant.
Yeah.
I think is a big deal. Yeah, kind of interesting on that. I was also noticing here, we can show it later.
Oh no, I can see it right now.
These plastic pieces.
Oh boy. That's
not really
good.
ideal there.
Yeah, you got to be really careful with the wash mitt to not nick any of those edges and stuff.
Yeah, and just in general, I'm not putting a lot of pressure on this. I am putting some.
Yeah.
But we're gonna flip over here and come to the other side. Let's see how, same thing with this side, and you can really feel it.
I can hear the deep tone of the metal.
It's a nice, well, not a nice, but it's a big thud.
Yeah.
Essentially.
It's a premium thud.
It's a premium thud. Okay.
Headlights look pretty cool.
So I noticed this too when we were standing here. These put out a lot of heat. I was actually standing here looking at the front of the vehicle before and noticed my kind of leg feeling a little warm. Oh. And that was actually from the headlights. They're already
really toasty.
Yeah.
So maybe they used some of the best headlight technology, but not the most energy efficient. At least we don't have to worry about ice building up on the headlights like the Rivian.
You know, that's a great point though as well, because I can already tell you from that, those would definitely kind of cheat off some of that ice.
Whereas these don't burn any temperature, and I'm getting clumps of ice and snow on these.
So also interesting to notice.
Pop the door.
So already popped the door. So I would definitely like to have this car locked while we're, and kind of a weird.
It's not auto closing, is it? There we go.
Kind of weird there.
I don't know what I did with the key. I just had it.
I think I may have the key. I don't know. It's always one of those
things. If you just push the key, you can lock the car.
I do have the key.
Okay, so right on the top, there's a hidden button. If you just push right in the center.
Here?
The top of the key. So you're underneath. Yeah, there you go. Right in the center on top, right there. There you go.
Very strange.
I like it.
Is that a proximity key?
I don't know if it's been my phone or the key. I haven't tested it yet.
Interesting, okay.
I don't know if it's just a passive key like Rivian. My guess is it is a proximity key, but a lot of car makers, Tesla and Rivian, both are moving away from that. Car looks really nice in here, I have to say. From like its shape, assuming, let's just picture the big wheels on this thing. Really cool.
Yeah, I really think the big wheels make a huge, huge difference on this car.
Yeah, and it does sound like they're on their way, so I can't wait to see this thing on some...
That's going to be really cool.
Meaty wheels and tires.
Also, immediately noticing, and I kind of get this vibe a little bit different than most people, but you kind of start feeling the size of these cars as you move around them. Big, big car, actually.
Yeah, definitely. It's a full-size car.
I feel like it looks pretty small in photos.
Okay, interesting.
But definitely in person, it's a...
Maybe it's because I've been lucky enough to spend a lot of time with them at showrooms and things along the way. I've been able to really, figure out its size and placement.
Yeah,
but,
and like this is literally my first time ever even being around a Lucid.
right, you can see the camera in the rear back here.
Yeah, I've never even seen one of these on the road, so this is kind of cool. I didn't even realize that these were actually emblems on the outside.
We have one in town, actually.
Really?
Yeah, we have a Zenith Red Lucid Air in town.
Very nice. Also interesting, I wanted to talk about this at some point. They call this a metallic black paint, and there's not a lot of metallic at all.
Actually, I didn't think it was metallic, and then you had to like take a flashlight to it to be like, oh yeah, there's the metallic.
Yeah, it's very subtle.
Now, I personally prefer a flat black paint. That is my preference.
Of course you do.
Coleton's bane of existence. Because I like a nice, rich, deep black paint like my Model S over here, which is just, looks amazing when it's clean. The problem is you drive it 2 inches out of the detail bay and it's just destroyed.
Yeah, pretty much. All right, so we're gonna come back in here. We're gonna turn off the regular tap water, come immediately over to our deionized water.
And you did that with just some valves. Did you build those valves and everything?
I did, yeah. So theirs was similar from Obsessed Garage, but they use Prevost piping, which is actually meant for air hoses, not necessarily meant for a ton of water. So I went with a PVC structure here and built all of these into here so I can literally on and off super quickly.
I see you using them all the time. That's pretty cool. And you'll also notice Coleton always starts the pressure washer away from the car.
Yeah, because these things in a sense become bullets. If they're not, like if you get this just off and like that, and if you were to shoot this, it becomes a projectile.
Yeah, that thing will hurt somebody.
So you wanna make sure it's in. Every time you guys see me wash car, down here, then on. Look at this silver paint right here.
Wow.
Zero protection on there.
It's just holding all the water on here. This is crazy. I've never seen such unprotected paint.
Yeah.
But again, no fault of Lucid's. That's how most cars are delivered. Right. It's just the car, you know, we're talking just paint stuff here.
Right, yeah. Look at that door now.
Yeah, wow. Literally holding all the water in. Oh yeah, you can see the roof is purple.
Isn't that neat?
That's really cool, that purple roof. Wow, super
So this,
cool.
Kyle, come back here, because this is gonna be a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
I think for kind of all Lucids. Look at how much soap, I've probably rinsed this 3 or 4 times, is still coming out of here because this is such a large piece.
Yeah.
Definitely gonna have to, every time you
It's
wash
getting
this,
in there.
you're gonna have to come through and make sure you dry that out. It's kind of in general, but that's a lot more than I've seen.
Yeah, maybe if you go through like an auto car wash, you're gonna need to open that trunk lid after.
Definitely.
Yeah.
See, and as you rinse it, it just keeps coming back. There's just
There's a never-ending supply of soap.
All right, so we've got it washed down now. Initial thoughts, again, little to no protection. The bugs on the front end really, really stuck on there. I was amazed with your Plaid how long that sat on there and with all the bugs, and they came off pretty easily, but that's the difference between a coated vehicle.
Right, that's a ceramic coat versus not. So what are you using here as a barrier for drying?
So we call these drying aids. I just like to use them just to get a little bit more lubrication on the paint there, because we're essentially wiping it with little to no lubrication. Now water is in a sense a lubricating solution on there, but I just like to give it a little bit more.
Interesting, yeah. And so, I mean, a lot of what we're discussing is vehicle-specific care, such as the paint not, you know, sort of holding water and sheeting rather than beading. But would you say it's a little bit too early to tell, but just from the build on the car, are there any areas that you should be mindful of as a Lucid owner that's going to be going around and, you know, not wanting to break anything?
Sure.
Or, yeah, what do you recommend?
This is, I mean, right here, this is the biggest thing I've noticed so far. This feels very flimsy. I also don't know if this may be somewhat of an active Aero, just kind of wondering if this actually moves with air pressure to alleviate some airflow. I don't know, but they seem to both do it, and I would, just from going around the car, everything feels decently tight other than that.
Okay, so maybe that's by design actually. And then the only other thing I would point out to be careful with is just these little badges in the back. These are just don't seem to be buttoned down in the rear, and just pulling that edge, it's quite sharp. You could be, you know, you could hurt the badge with a towel pretty easily.
Definitely.
Yeah, so you're using a drying agent even on the glass there then?
Yeah, it just helps it helps pick up all of that water on here. Some guys hate it. I find it's just gives a little bit of you know, kind of lubrication again on there, just to kind of pick it up as well in the towel. It just seems to work pretty well. Crazy what that back glass does there.
Yeah, very interesting. Very similar, like the new Model 3s don't do it, but the older ones did.
Yeah.
I always like that internal tinting look for sure. I think
yeah,
it's
you can definitely feel there. You could really quickly and easily pull that badge right off.
Yep, absolutely. Well, let's get this thing dried off, and then what we'll do is what's the plan after that? Isopropyl alcohol? Or?
Yeah, well, I think we will. I just kind of previous notes from your Plaid. I mean, it was a massive difference, right?
Yeah.
So I want to give it an apples to apples comparison and not give, you know, kind of Lucid or Tesla the disadvantage in that way. So let's just do it kind of strategically, get them both to the same way.
Yep, we'll get everything out of this paint and then start looking at how it came off the line. Coleton, we got the thing cleared off.
Look how much nicer this looks already.
Wow. This, honestly, the shape of the car, because it's so Aero focused, I think it's quite a nice shape. Just overall, the panels are big. They're really big panels. I mean, this front clamshell hood's pretty insane.
Yeah.
Have you even seen the front trunk on this thing yet?
I haven't actually.
Do you want me to show you really quick?
Sure,
Here,
let's look at it.
I'll pop it just so you can see. One thing I noticed was under the hood while charging it yesterday, opened it up. It was really toasty. I'll show you where. So it's an electronic hood. You just hit this little button right there. One thing I don't like though is on those buttons, you touch them by accident and then they open. So I was sitting at a stoplight yesterday.
Oh, wow.
And I accidentally hit the rear trunk and it just started opening. And I was like, oh crap.
Oh, wow.
Lower.
That is a big amount of space down here.
And look
I like
underneath.
this a lot. That's a very nice touch there that they didn't have to do, but very nice to see. Wow, wow, wow.
Yeah, crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it was the largest front trunk before the F-150 Lightning.
No kidding.
Yeah, and then here's some of the, you can see just soap got in through these vents and stuff, but you can see they have a little rubber flap in here, which is interesting. So these are designed to move with pressure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting on that. That's a really unique design how they've done that. Wow.
Yeah, this has a little bit of foam in here, and you can see,
Very cool.
Wild.
How do you close the front trunk on this?
There's a little button right in here.
Oh, on the inside.
Watch your head.
Whoa, hello,
Yeah,
that comes down quickly.
It's instant. It should have a little delay and maybe a beep. I actually think by regulation it might need it. I don't know.
That's pretty interesting. Okay.
New car company stuff.
Yeah, so we've got this dried now. Next step, because we want to look at it bare naked paint, make sure there's no wax or sealants or anything like that on here. I'm going to come in and wipe this down with an isopropyl alcohol solution.
And we don't recommend doing this all the time to your paint.
No, absolutely not. What I'm trying to do here is make sure that all those layers are gone. I'm not kidding when I tell you Kyle's Plaid felt like two different cars once we did this. Lots of polishing oils and stuff appeared to be on there. As soon as I hit it with the IPA, it was like all this stuff came right out of it.
Yeah, so let's see if that's the same for this then. And show us how you'll do it, and then we won't make everyone sit through the process.
No, so it's literally as simple as this. Spraying it on, coming in with a nice soft microfiber towel, just wiping it down, and it obviously evaporates. It is alcohol, but you can feel now very sticky. So we have indeed.
Oh, you can hear it.
Feel the difference here.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, neato. Nice. Well, we'll do this for the whole car. Are you going to do the glass as well, or not really
No,
needed?
I'm going to leave the glass because we're not inspecting the glass per se. I'm more kind of interested to look at their paint, look at the paint quality. We're we're definitely going to get out the paint meter, check out how all of that is looking. Also noticing here, this front little piece here holds a lot of bugs in there.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I actually even noticed some bugs that were chilling on the back side of this that I had killed. I don't know how that was possible, but this dude was like split in half. All right, well, we'll do this down. Shout out to anyone still watching the video this much in, but of course we'll ask Max to put chapters in the video. Right, Max? Yep, thank you. So Max will be editing this one.
All right, so we're wiped down with isopropyl alcohol. Again, we wanted to see what the naked paint looks like. So,
and all I know is I saw you hit it with a flashlight real quick and you're like, ooh, oh, and I was like, I don't know, it looks pretty good to me.
So, let's bring it in here. Let's start on this back. So
show
again,
us something good to start.
Okay, I haven't seen necessarily good, to be perfectly honest.
Okay.
I'm gonna show you this spot right here. Notice how it goes from kind of lighter. So, okay, this has been polished a lot.
Oh, really? So, all right, before we even get into it, let's explain what we're actually looking for. So there's the car that came out of the production line, which is basically when it comes out of the paint booth, it's fresh paint, it's perfect paint, in theory.
Yep.
And I've actually been over near their paint shop. It's a brand new paint shop because it's a brand new production facility, and it's designed to actually be modular to work with the factory, which is cool. It's like a centerpiece, so there's room for expansion. And they're really proud of their paint shop.
Okay.
But their paint shop is only as good as the prep work before and the post work sort of finishing touches on the car. And what we find a lot is that when, especially at end of line, you have sometimes untrained polishers or people that are fixing the paint, or they're on a time crunch and they can't spend the 10 days that you spend getting a car perfect. There's no car that comes off the line that's perfect. And partially, as well as what we're trying to figure out, is this car has 3,500 miles on it. A lot of the scratches, swirl marks could have been induced from something else.
Without a doubt.
But there are some things that are without question happening on end of line because we know the history on the car.
Yep, so we know the history as in the car hasn't been buffed on to this particular client's knowledge. So it had come from Lucid, he's washed it twice, went back to Lucid. I'm already seeing a ton of buffing marks that are not good.
Okay, show us.
So let's dive in here. So immediately I'm gonna come in here, noticing this on this edge here, we've got a lot of compound buildup. So that's your first initial. Then I'm gonna come in here.
Would this have been fixed if they taped the area? Sorry to interrupt you.
You can. The big thing with this is cleaning it as well. So you can tape it off and then go back and clean it as well. But as I come in here, lots of scratches. We're gonna omit those for the most part. There is a ton of DA haze. Okay, what is DA haze? So when you're polishing this, your Model S Plaid was the same way. I'm assuming this paint's pretty soft. Okay, so we're coming in here, they're not refining it down. We're getting a lot of scouring from the pad because it may be a soft paint, not using residue control, things like that. As I come this way, I mean, just look at this paint, guys. Super hazy. And as we come in this area, I can see it from my naked eye. We may have turned these lights fully down. Big buffing mark here, lots of work going on. As I come around here, this is like almost dull and dry. Come a little to your left here, Max, if you will. You're gonna get it right in here. Look at this edge here.
Oh, wow.
Really cloudy. I don't like that.
So can you explain how this would have happened or what causes something like this?
Yeah, so typically what's gonna happen here is they're gonna paint the car, they're gonna go over quality control. So if there's a dust nib essentially just in basic terms means a piece of debris got in the actual paint. They're gonna go in and sand that, come back and buff it. Now, in terms of buffing, there's a lot of different steps you can do. You can compound a car, which is essentially trying to remove scratches. You can polish a car, which is refining, just kind of getting it. It's a lot less aggressive. The problem here is, I'm kind of assuming this is soft paint, but they are doing a ton of work on this, polishing it, and not polishing it properly per se.
But we saw very similar things to the Model S. We've seen similar things on Mercedes paint. This isn't really unique to Lucid,
in areas, this entire back panel I've already looked at has been polished.
Oh, so the entire panel.
This entire panel, as I come up here, let's look at this area. This is a dried piece of paint up here. Definitely not what you want to see there.
And then, okay, so, you know, at the end of the day, we're not totally sure 100% if this is how it came out of the factory or if maybe Lucid quality control afterwards when it went back to, I guess, the service center could have polished the car to make it right. But there are some things that are interesting or at least curious, and that would be ribs in these panels.
All right, so we can now see a little bit of these dents. So noticing a few right here as well as down this panel as well. So it's hard to say whether those have been, you know, before or after from Lucid. I just want to point those out. To me, they seem very inconsistent. So
I would say it's unlikely that he had a ladder fall on his car in many different places.
Because I'm not seeing scratching on it either. And typically when you have an impact, you're going to see a scratch mark there. But definitely interesting to know.
I've just never seen these types of ripples before because is this a plastic component?
It feels like it to me.
So
we'll put our paint meter on it and we'll be able to tell immediately.
I bet it is thermoplastic of some kind. I bet it got hot and the clips are held in here and just the temperature changes.
Well, and as we talked about that panel back there with all the ripples on it too, that's something interesting to know.
Yeah, we'll show that for sure.
Definitely. So
we got the Scangrip lights on.
Yeah, let's flip around here. So this is kind of a nice light source. What do these do? Okay, so Scangrip lights essentially are my way to show what I see outside in the sun. These mimic the sun. These two here, you can actually dial in the color temperature to more accurately see defects. My purpose with this here is I want to focus more on these panels here. Now I've got my handheld light, but Max, as we come in here, what I'm seeing a lot of, I am seeing this edge here, a lot of buffing going on here. I'm seeing a lot of DA marks, very, very hazy paint. Now, this car has gone back for QA. So I want to make the point, I don't know if this is necessarily exactly from when the car was delivered or during QA, but nonetheless, I want to make the point that this has been back to Lucid twice. The customer states this has not been buffed or polished
so
at
either
any
way,
point.
Lucid touched the car and induced these, whether it was their service center or whether it was the factory, most likely the factory.
Right, absolutely. So that's what I'm kind of thinking here. From initial thoughts, this car is getting a lot more polishing than Rivian, a lot more than Model S Plaid. So lots and lots of work going on. In my opinion, not the greatest work happening there.
And maybe the black paint, well, definitely the black paint isn't helping this situation.
No, and it never does, but I'm curious as to why they're spending, because they are spending time here, right? And that's kind of the interesting thing. So why are you spending time on this, making it, in a sense, worse? Because as a car comes out, it should be fresh, full, like after it's painted, have no scratches in it.
Right, and you really don't want to be working with fresh paint either because the paint still hasn't off-gassed yet. Like you really want to let that thing bake in before you start going to town on it.
Right.
But of course, it's end of line, you got to do it. So that's just typically how it goes.
Yeah, it's very interesting. This whole section, Max, let's bring this in a little. Look how hazy and kind of grimy that paint is. Also, even noticing up here, they're hitting it on this black plastic trim. Lots of DA marks here, just tons and tons of buffing marks.
But you know what I'm not seeing so much of? Remember on the Model S we had these sanding marks everywhere? I haven't seen one on this yet.
Max, come on here. Look at this edge here. Come back a little bit and get this light. Look at that edge there. See those marks up there? We've got some really, really good rotary marks in there as well as on the black trim here. But yes, we haven't been all the way around this car. I haven't seen sanding marks per se.
That's a really big departure from what we've seen on Rivian.
Right.
And what we've seen on Tesla and what we've seen on Mercedes and others. A lot of them will go and denib and sand and not polish over them.
Right.
So it's possible that they did that with this car and then did that polishing. Maybe the finish isn't up to your standard or to really anyone's standard.
Yeah, I would think so.
But it's possible that they took the extra time with the car to try and finish it out.
That definitely could be. The only thing I would say about that is just in general, normally when you see a sanding mark, you see a variation of orange peel. Right. So remember on Rivian how we would see lots of orange peel? There's this circle completely flat. Yeah. So far I haven't seen a lot on that.
Okay.
Just kind of my thought process.
So that could be props to their paint booth then.
It could be. Honestly, the texture and the orange peel looks pretty normal. Like I wouldn't say it's like crazy amount of orange peel. I wouldn't say that it's perfectly flat either.
Right.
I don't really, my personal opinion on orange peel is to leave as much paint on there so it's not the end of the world.
Right, a lot of people will ask for like a full orange peel delete, but you're just like grinding half your paint down just to get that perfect finish on the clear coat. Yeah, I mean, overall, I have to say, you know, this is within the first 3,000 cars off the line. It looks very tightly put together with a couple little exceptions.
It does.
But it could be way worse.
It definitely could. My biggest thing is I'm just really wondering why they're doing so much polishing and not like because they're spending a lot of time, right?
Right, but they're not getting the best product at the end.
Exactly.
So perhaps their end of line needs to go to clear detailing school.
Yeah.
and spend some time, and then their production rate would go down to 1 a day.
Exactly, or even less.
There is a balance.
But again, that's kind of what I'm thinking is, so these cars come in, they get painted, right?
Yep.
And then they go through that QC process. Why are they spending the time to polish it? Is there a bunch of dust nibs in there? Like, what are they seeing?
Right.
That's what I'm curious.
What's wrong with the factory paint finish?
Exactly.
Yeah. That's
because what I am hoping they're not doing is just polishing it because they think that's the right thing to do and causing more damage. That's kind of where my brain goes.
But ultimately, I still have yet to see anything that's irreparable.
Without a doubt.
Other than the ribs in these plastic panels up here?
This edge is the only thing that I really noticed. Let's show this one more time. That a little bit concerns me. It looks like a little bit of off-gassing, something kind of strange here. Max, as you come over to the right, let's get it here, right there. Some really weird marks going on there. So I'll play around with that.
But overall, like if we looked at the Model S, it looked 10 times worse than this.
Yeah.
In my impression. Like we were going around and we were finding spots that were just totally destroyed.
Like literally almost to the point of being dull or matte.
Yeah, and that car was factory delivered with 0 miles on it. This was the first stop basically. And this thing has been on a 1,000-mile road trip across the country. It's been daily driven for the last few months. I don't know, my impression is really impressed with overall the quality.
Okay, and here's a two-sided thing.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
devil's advocate.
I think what they're doing is, as far as paint quality, I'm kind of impressed. As far as paint polishing, refining, I'm not impressed at all.
I agree with that.
I think those can be two totally different things.
Yep.
What we saw on Model S Plaid was lots of very weird sanding marks, like tons of haze. This is definitely less, but I'm assuming that this paint is not as soft as Tesla's either, which is a big positive.
Right, could be. And you won't know until you start working on the car, which will be on out-of-spec detailing in the series coming up.
Absolutely.
Because that's when we're going to get into this car's specific paint and talk about what it takes to get this paint from the state it is to later on.
I'm just going to keep going around here. Max, pull along this side here. So again, I'm noticing here, see all of this white? You may have to come around the other side here, Max. See all of this white marks here? So lots of polishing going on. So they've done this whole door. From what I can tell, this whole car has been basically polished.
Yeah, I think they polished every panel. And interestingly, I'm noticing as well, no carpeted or felted fender liner. Plastic,
which as a detailer,
you
I prefer.
love that, but it's louder.
Yes.
But I'm also surprised because the car's pretty quiet on the highway with those.
So, and again here, this is one of those spots I was talking about earlier. Lots of compound, and here, this white mark here. These edges, I'm going to be honest, really kind of freak me out because it looks like this has been buffed quite a bit. Let me get a good, see how dull and hazy that is? That really, really concerns me on that area there. So, kind of interesting. I'd be curious to put a paint meter on that. I think we should probably do that now.
Yeah, I'm actually not seeing many of those little things. So my impression is maybe they did sand down some of those sections, but they polished out the whole car.
Yeah. Again, though, I think the difference in orange peel, you would see a little bit more of that.
Okay,
so
fair.
Let's take this here. So this is, again, just a pretty cheap paint meter. This is by no means the absolute most accurate, but gives us a good idea. 4.45 mils.
Wow, pretty thin.
Honestly, not a ton of paint.
Yeah, pretty thin.
It's average, but it's not a ton. GLS 580 that I had in was between 6 and 7 mils, so quite a bit more.
I wonder what that EQE is out there.
And let's definitely check that. But wow.
Wow, dead even.
Dead even. Ooh, that's pretty thin. Really low.
Pretty
so
thin.
that's
all that weight savings for range, yo.
Yeah, honestly, that really concerns me.
Okay.
I do not like that.
What is the number, just for our viewers?
3.24.
3.24.
That is, anytime you're in the threes,
pretty thin. There's not much for you to actually work with.
No.
And that could be a after painting thing. Someone just went to town on this thing.
And that's kind of what I'm getting at is,
Yeah.
so, okay, you painted this car. Why are we buffing it, taking off paint when it's fresh?
Yeah, interesting.
Kind of weird there.
And again, as far as we're aware,
4
Lucid,
mils.
Lucid is the only one who's touched the paint in this way, whether it was the service center or the factory.
438, 430. Really consistent in some of those areas. Up front here, 326.
Wow.
Goodness,
Max, you could probably stay back here.
3.5. I really don't like that, honestly. That's very concerning because once we get into that 3 mil range, don't have a ton of paint to work with.
Yeah, that's pretty scary. So obviously you're thinking about how you're going to detail this car.
Yeah, immediately. I mean, that's what goes in the back of my head. I've got to be very precise with this. Honestly, we may get to the point where I touch it, and if it's like super soft, we may have to have a conversation with Peter and go, we don't have enough paint to work with here.
Right.
Which is sad to see because this car is essentially brand new.
But if we look at an S-Class level black car, they tend to have pretty thick-ish paint,
Yep.
and they leave a lot of room for detailers to get those paint because they know those cars are going to go in for work afterwards.
Yep.
That's very shockingly thin paint on this car.
That's, to be honest, that's the thinnest paint I've ever seen on a brand new car.
And
ever.
that's nothing you can visually see. Visually, it's deep black paint, looks awesome.
Right.
But that's scary.
So, and what I want to make a quick point about this. So this tool, all it's measuring is the difference between the metal and the tip of this. What I don't know is how much clear coat that is or how much color coat that is. We could have 3 mils of actual black paint and 0.2 mils of clear coat.
And then you're screwed.
And so this is going to be one of those really challenging, scary details, to be honest.
We really need to get another Lucid to check. Or we need someone to comment on this video with a Lucid
and take
and check
some paint
this.
readings.
Because if that could be a thing where they just all are coming out thin. I don't know. But we gotta, this is one example. We really need to get multiple cars.
So let's go around the car here. Again, that was the lowest I've ever really seen. 3.23 here on the door.
Wow. How about that charge port area where it's rubbing? So charge port's plastic. Yeah, but what about where it's rubbing underneath?
3.28 down here where it's rubbing 3.7, 3.9.
So it's consistent.
Yeah, it's consistently thin.
Which makes me think that it's applied thin, not polished thin, because a polish
applied
wouldn't
thin
be...
and then polished too, which is like, I'm honestly, I'm getting a little stressed thinking through this whole detail here. Let's keep coming around the side of the door here, especially above here.
Okay.
So a little bit more there.
5.3.
4.4. Goodness sakes. Anytime it hits a 3, my heart stops a little, to be honest. I don't like to see that at all.
Oh, 3.1.
And what did I tell you how much this panel's been buffed on?
Yeah. So the car's just had way too much work done to it.
4.36 here. 5. So 3, 4, 5.
So that's polishing, probably.
It's also how the paint lays, because this is a little bit different than this area. It naturally is going to be a little bit different.
Makes sense. This should be plastic. Would you mind just checking that?
Yeah, let's check it up here as well. Ooh.
Oh, 3 on the roof. How about this panel though?
Yeah, I will.
Yeah. 2.7. You're not touching that panel. Whoa. 9.6. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. Okay. So
what is going on here?
This is kind of like the weirdest I've ever seen. Like this is
I've never seen
beyond
like
wild to me.
Okay.
So back here, this is a scary panel too. I have no idea how much paint's here.
Plastic, just
because
like carbon
this is the
fiber.
plastic. Or bumpers or.
Isn't there like a really expensive paint meter that you can use?
Yes. Some will say they work, some will say they don't.
Okay.
Kinda
Maybe it's
interesting.
worth getting one to just see.
I would absolutely love to. Let's try this side to see what it says. 4 over here. So half the amount of paint on this one versus that one.
Wow, that's inconsistent.
283.
Oh my God. So this panel, which is getting 2.2, there's no paint left. Maybe it's just primer. Maybe they didn't even paint it. That's why it's satin. or silver, I don't know. That's
honestly,
crazy.
not what I want to see there. This, without a doubt, Peter and I are going to have a discussion on this.
Yeah, Peter, the owner of the car.
Yeah.
Maybe you should also talk to Peter, the CEO of Lucid.
Yeah, because this, like, honestly, this is interesting.
Wow. Not good.
Let's try this panel here too, just for kind of reference to the other side. So we had about, again, 3.5 super low, 5.0, 4.23. I want to try this area because I know that got hit pretty good. 3.91, 3.40. Very low reading.
So what would a comparable Audi or Porsche be in these types of areas, would you say? I mean, I know they're all over the place, but what range?
4.5 to 6, 7, kind of in that area. Let's
on
check.
that GT3, we actually saw 14 on the hood.
Yeah.
Right.
So let's just check my Tesla Model 3 for reference here.
But again, you have a pearl layer.
A pearl layer, so that's 8.14.
Right.
Again,
let's check the EQE, since
yeah,
that's a
let's
brand
head
new,
outside.
delivered straight from Germany, never been buffed on car, you know, sort of comparable.
And it's raining.
Raining.
Welcome to
What the heck?
Colorado. Let's go here just on the back. 411, 5.2. That's around what we always see.
Yeah, sure. Man, came out and a freaking tornado's coming through here.
So around that 4 to 5.
Right.
I'm comfortable working on something like that.
How about the hood on this really
Lucid,
quick? Because
yeah.
the hood up front on the Lucid, I know everything's different, right? But
Yeah.
this is a comparable electric vehicle from a German manufacturer. 3.3, interesting, thin.
4.2, 4. So I would be comfortable buffing in this, no problem.
But this is thin as well. So maybe this is the new way to paint.
Honestly, these are like two I've never seen this thin before.
Wow, and how about my Model S? After it's been worked on, of course, so you've already removed some paint.
Sure. Let's just come up here on this hood. 4.62, 4.45. So
Okay.
again, right around that 4 to 5 range, very common.
4 to 5 you like. 3s you're not into.
3, I'm like, we're gonna have some conversations to see what's going on.
Okay, interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, and we saw 2s on the Lucid. Never seen a 2 before.
I've seen like 3 9s before. I have never read a 2, ever.
And you just got a 3.3 on that EQE as well.
Yeah,
That's pretty rare.
very interesting.
But maybe new paint's just really thin. I mean, you do mostly new car deliveries.
Which,
I mean, yeah.
which I don't like to see
Right, yeah,
at all.
yeah. So,
Wow.
okay, so now we kind of know the Lucid Air. We've gone through, and just to summarize this video, the car has been, every panel's been touched.
Pretty
from
much
the
every
factory,
single panel I can tell.
which is something we don't see very often. Very often we see spot fixes.
Without a doubt. And that's, again, talking dust nibs and getting those out, quickly sanding them, quickly polishing them, on their way.
And so this one, someone took the time to bzzz on every surface of the car, which is very rare. It's very time consuming. And ultimately, it didn't leave the car with the perfect possible finish.
No.
Because of course there's scratches and swirls. That can be from ownership time.
I was more than anything looking at this, I'm omitting the scratches. You cannot put that on Lucid at all.
No, yeah.
The DA haze,
That's 100%.
100% Lucid.
Yep.
So that's what I'm really looking at and worried
And
about.
the thin paint pretty much consistently, except for that 9 we saw over there, which is crazy. It's almost like they ran that thing through twice by accident.
Yep.
Yeah, just never seen such thin paint. I never have. Never seen this much inconsistency, a 9 to a 2 in a very similar area.
Yeah.
But overall, visually, the car looks pretty good.
It does.
No, so I mean, at the end of the day, what's your impression? I don't even know how to summarize this. I'm the driving guy.
I honestly don't know. I'm kind of almost shocked to see how low that is. Like,
Okay.
That's why these things are so critical. We're going to do some testing on this. I need to think through this from a detailing perspective. If I test it up there and this is soft, we're going to run into some issues, and this almost may be to the point where
You're not gonna
I may
touch
just
it.
say, I'm not going to touch it.
Right, or you might just have to do a light polish. To get it as
A
best
light
as you
polish,
can.
ceramic coat it, call it good.
Right, and that's about it. And then nothing else to the car ever again.
No.
Yeah. but the car needs more paint for sure. So
without a doubt.
So there you go. Very interesting situation on the Lucid Air. Very beautiful car. I would say overall for a new automaker compared to Tesla early days, very much better build quality than early Tesla stuff.
Yeah, I would say so.
Really much better build quality. And I know Lucid's working really hard on that, and they're working to improve it. And again, my impression of being at the factory is they have the right team. You do get the sense that they're a small automaker and they can't buy the best stuff from their suppliers. So they're trying their best, but like panels like this back here are just a total disappointment, how they're already warping,
Totally
how
agree.
these are already warping. It's like, you know, first model year of a first car, it hasn't had all of the long-term durability testing that these would pop in if you left the car in Saudi Arabia and then brought it to the Arctic Circle.
I will say, yeah, but then that car that's sitting in the bay here, that's the 3800th built,
Right,
something
this
like
one
that.
4,000 roughly, yeah.
And it's like quite a bit better. So
Okay, so your impression is Rivian has a better build than Lucid.
exterior, interior on this is something I've honestly blown away with.
But the interior on that's screwed together nice.
No, it is, but like this is just,
Elevated.
yeah, without a doubt.
So, yeah, I guess your recommendation to Lucid would be what? If you had to ask, you know, because you're going to be detailing a lot of these, I imagine.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think we're probably going to see this a lot. My kind of thought process would be bump up the paint and don't polish the heck out of them, because it seems like there's a lot of polishing going on here.
Right, and maybe one day Lucid would be cool enough to invite us over to the factory,
Yeah.
and maybe we can even see how they're prepping the cars afterwards.
Without a doubt.
Because again, maybe this is all Lucid QA that the car went back into,
Sure.
which you and I both think probably not when it went to the service center, or it's all happening on end of line. And if so, I think it would be extremely helpful to have someone like yourself go over and work with the guys and be, you know, help them,
Yeah.
because you need to factor in throughput is most important here, getting the cars on the road.
Without a
And then
doubt.
second is, you know, paint thickness, but it's still a very close second that the car's got paint.
My personal opinion, I would rather them not buff on these at all than even bother spending the time.
Right, because if
doing it.
someone really cares, they're bringing them to a guy like you
Exactly.
anyway.
Or
Yeah.
getting them full body wrapped in PPF or whatever like that,
Sure.
you know, could be. But this is a super tricky situation, right?
Yeah.
I have little to no paint to work with, so
So we may not be seeing an out-of-spec detailing series
Yeah.
on this, but
Honestly.
we'll have an update on that channel, of course, as to what to do. A total shock to both of us when you hit
Yeah.
that paint meter to the paint. We did not expect that.
no.
Crazy. Well, thanks for watching another out-of-spec reviews video. Let us know what you think in the comments below. 3 people will watch this because it's a super nerd paint video. But check out out-of-spec detailing if you're into this kind of stuff. And yeah, maybe we should do another video on that channel, actually lining the Rivian and the Plaid up.
Sure.
But we'll see what happens. But thanks for watching. Bye-bye.